How's it going, OFPs? And welcome to another episode of the Off-Field Players Podcast, the only podcast for aspiring sports industry professionals. I'm your host, Philip Hall, and I hope everybody's having an awesome week or weekend by the time you're listening to this. And that's right, I'm back after my Thanksgiving break. So yeah, I want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving if you celebrated, if you spent time with family, or as Jay Hollahan, one of my previous guests would like to say. Hope you enjoyed having the three F's of Thanksgiving: family, food, and football. So yeah, I know I sure did myself, but yeah, I hope all the OFPs enjoyed their Thanksgiving weekend. If you for whatever you decide to do, maybe you had a Friendsgiving, I don't know, but as long as you enjoyed the three F's, is all good. But yeah, but the Off Field Players podcast is back on its regular scheduled timing. I just wanted to take the week off for the holiday. Didn't want to post, but now I'm back and pushing all the way through until the end of the year. And yeah, we're gonna keep these episodes coming out. Still gonna do my best to continue to produce episodes on a consistent basis, as I was before. But yeah, definitely, a lot of good things still happening in the sports world. Still thriving, still going crazy, and yeah, we're getting new headlines every which of ways. So definitely gonna try to do everything I can to make sure to provide the information that I can provide to all the OFPs who are listening to the podcast and who will continue to support me in helping grow the podcast and sharing it with everybody. But yeah, definitely gonna do everything I can to keep it going for all the OFPs to continue to grow the OFP family. But today I want to continue going into our discussion about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And, we've already been about 2 weeks past the conclusion of the race weekend of the first Las Vegas Grand Prix in 40 years for Formula One. And yeah, this is going to be our recap episode compared to the last episode that I did, detailing the buildup of the Las Vegas Grand Prix for Formula One. But before I go any further in this today's episode, I want to make sure to remind everybody to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video if you're watching the YouTube version, which is also the video version. So yeah, make sure to do that. And if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, make sure to continue to follow the Off Field Players on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and also make sure to share the link and leave 5 stars for for the podcast. It helps out a lot. It helps reach a lot more people from around the world to tune into the Off Field Players podcast and learn more about the sports industry as a whole. And also make sure to follow the Off Field Players podcast on social media at OFP_podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Again, it's at OFP_podcast on Instagram and TikTok. So with that being said, I want to go into today's discussion talking about the aftermath of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. So a lot to unpack when it came to the big race weekend and the most anticipated Grand Prix on Formula One's 2023 calendar, because yeah, for an event like this and for the magnitude and the buildup that was revolved around it, there were some mixed reviews in regards to how it all ended up in Sin City. And yeah, I mean, as I was doing my research on the race and just what all the news outlets that were talking about the race and just them sharing their thoughts and giving the readers and writers the reviews for how they felt about the weekend. Yeah, I mean, almost every headline told a different story. So we had stories about people saying the race was a success, or F1 got lucky and was able to make it out of Vegas alive with how all the different problems that occurred. And then there were some headlines that just said that the race was a flat out disaster. And it was also looking on YouTube, YouTube influencers that talk about F1 on their channels, and it was the same thing when it came to just giving their opinions about the race and how it ended up. Was it great? Was it not great? Was it mid, as my generation would like to say? I mean, there's so much that was discussed and so much that you can find in regards to how people felt about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. But I'm just gonna try to play both sides and going into my discussion on how people really felt about it, if it was positive, if it was negative, again, if it was mid. And yeah, I'm just gonna give out some of my thoughts on how I saw it, and still try to play both sides. So in regards to just the mixed reactions for the race, there were some folks that were saying that didn't live up to the expectations of the track layout. Because if we go back to previously for what the track layout was 40 years ago in the last Las Vegas Grand Prix, they pretty much built the track in the parking lot of Caesar's Palace. And of course, for those that travel to Vegas on a normal basis or live there, I'm sure that the Caesar's Palace parking lot is much different than how it looked 4 years ago. And with this year's layout being on literally the Las Vegas Strip, there was a lot of, confliction in regards to even trying to build the track or there in the first place. I mean, F1 had to jump through a lot of hoops just to get approvals from the city of Las Vegas and, like the state of Nevada to be able to even build a track of that size. Because, even though Formula One has historically always been a sport or a motorsport that has always taken their shows to the streets, city streets, there was like a bit of a hassle in regards to trying to put one literally on probably one of the most famous streets in the world, and with it being the Las Vegas Strip. And I just think with how much buildup and just all like the tugging and pulling that F1 had to do just to build a track. I mean, yeah, in a first time event like this, of course, you're going to have a lot of, barriers to break through. But I think the way that they went about it, in some cases, you could see it as being unethical, but in other cases, you could see it as, an opportunity for Las Vegas to put together a marquee event that's going to bring in a ton of revenue, which was expected. The Vegas market was expected to make just over $1 billion from that weekend alone, from people that were traveling to watch the race, like the casinos and the hotels being packed up, businesses like restaurants, bars, and other forms of entertainment thriving with the influx of people that were showing up for that weekend. Because again, like F1 pretty much had full control of like the city of Las Vegas for 4 days, like in November, and just seeing what was going on, just reading up on the news, the headlines of like Vegas is having this problem, or the people that live there or live close to the Strip, like they're trying to sue F1 for not having a proper, or at least giving everybody a heads up about the landscape of what they were going to do for the Strip. Because I was watching this YouTuber that I follow a lot of. His YouTube channel is called Black Flags Matter, but he goes by Darren Gilliam, like his actual name. And he was doing his own recap of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and just the build up behind it, because he lives in Vegas, and that's where he grew up. And he was saying how most of the market didn't really feel attached to the environment of the event, because for the most part, not the people that lived in Vegas or that live in Vegas, most of them didn't even go to the race. Like most of them, they couldn't stand the traffic that they had to go through if they were commuting to work, because of all the construction that was happening like on the Strip. And just all that pushback from the city and the pushback from the locals. I mean, it didn't really make F1's problem become a little more easier to resolve, because at the end of the day, F1's whole prerogative was to put this track together and have control of Vegas for the 4 days of that weekend. And I think when we think about just these big events that show up in these big markets, it really does suck that some of these sports leagues, they don't really take the consideration of trying to reach the local demographic. Because preferably, if I lived in Vegas, I would have wanted to go to the race. But just seeing how they were able to handle everything that was going on, I mean, it probably would have been hard to really get the local population or like population behind you to be all in and trying to host an event that could help the area. But I feel like when we look at sporting events, and when we hear stuff like, oh, this sporting event's going to help bring in revenue for the city, I think at times we kind of take it out of proportion to what that actually means. Because even though people, there were thousands of people that showed up to Vegas for the race, still saying that it's going to bring in revenue or an expected revenue for the region, again, like key word there, expected. I mean, sometimes expected doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And yeah, based on the numbers, like yeah, it could have happened, but we just have to be careful when we say things like that because because I think when it comes to trying to work in the sports industry, we never want to give people false hope. And I think like in these times, when we say stuff and we hope that and we're hoping that happens and or when we expect it to happen, and it doesn't happen, then yeah, like that's where you lose. That's where we lose because we never want to give false hope. We never want to give, false information. We always want to do the best we can to try to stay on course with what the goal is. And the goal for F1 was to host, anticipated race. The goal for Las Vegas was to try to build off of allowing them to even host this race, just for the region. Because again, like I mentioned in the previous episode, like Las Vegas has been a city historically built off of entertainment and just marquee events of any kind. And you could talk about the boxing matches. You could talk about the Frank Sinatra shows. I mean, you could talk about F1. I mean, any marquee event that Vegas is lucky to host, they're going to do everything they can to do it because that's what the city was historically built off of. And yeah, it's just I just think we have to be careful when we say that, oh, this is like we're expected to bring in $1 billion, or we're expected to see like a sellout, or oh, we're expected to like seek the expectations or meet the expectations that we want to meet. Just got to be careful with that. And yeah, and just talking about the ticket prices as well. I mean, like I mentioned, there wasn't a lot of Las Vegas. I think you call them Las Veganers or Las Veganas. I forget the Dominion name of Las Vegas, but I'll just say the people that live in Las Vegas, like again, like most of them weren't able to go to the race because the ticket prices were insanely high. These are the numbers that I pulled for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. So apparently, when the tickets first were going on sale, you could get them at 1,500, which I get because first time events. Las Vegas. Not only are you going to pay to go watch the race, but you're paying for the experience and you're paying for the other amenities that are going to be around the track, like the casinos, the hotels, the resorts, the restaurants, the bars, and yeah, like starting that low, I get. But when we talk about like just the bigger numbers, though, that's where Vegas and F1 makes their money. Because the ticket prices were ranging from 1,500 to 15,000. Some deals were even hitting in the six figures, and some even reached the millions. Like if you want the whole package deal, I mean, yeah, you were going to pay an arm and a leg for it. And I just think, this F1 race or the Las Vegas Grand Prix was a true primary example of what price discrimination can look like. Because yeah, like $1,500 easy for a grandstand seat, $15,000 if you want a seat, $1 million if you want the whole enchilada, which like it was of just about everything that you can do, like food, like VIP suite, access to the paddock. I mean, like I like anything. If you're gonna pay $1 million for something, you better have $1 million treatment. And yeah, I mean, it's just I from this perspective, I can understand why they were charging the tickets that high because yeah, first time ever event, and there can be a possibility that may never happen again because depending on just the reception for it. But again, Vegas like the F1 already inked a 9-year deal with Vegas to host the race 8 more times in the near future, and yeah, it's just something that I've really just looked into because yeah, like price discrimination has always been a big discussion in sports. Again, like I use the comparison of baseball. You're going to pay more to sit behind home plate than you are to sit in right field. But it's just what are you going to be wanting to pay for the experience that you're looking to have. But in this case, though, what people had to pay for the weekend, it didn't really match the experience because there was a situation where it was one of the practice days where the fans, that showed up to watch all the F1 teams practice, they were actually forced to leave. This would happen Thursday night of the race weekend. They were forced to leave at 1:30 a.m. during practice for logistical and staff issues. Again, I didn't don't know the exact details of what they mean by like staff or and logistical issues, but I'm sure it has something to do with the people that were assigned to work or that were hired to work the event, and the fans being forced to leave early because there were some on track issues that occurred that caused a lot of stoppages for the teams and the cars, and again, like the staff like probably either working off the clock or not even on it. There were some issues there, and even just like the obscene like practice schedule that they had, because looking back at what the schedule was, they were having practice at like midnight, or going into like 3 a.m. in the morning, or they would have practice and qualifying super late. But I think what F1 didn't get was that midnight, 8 o'clock at 8 p.m. Those are like peak hours for many of the businesses in Vegas. That's the time when people are out on the streets, they're out partying, they're out gambling, like doing whatever they want to do in Vegas. So yeah, like the fact that you decide to host practice and qualifying at the peak hours of the majority of businesses that operate in Las Vegas, I think that was a fumble, because there's just it's so odd that you would expect to have proper stability on the streets and that time in Las Vegas, Nevada. And what upset fans the most, the people were the fans that bought a ticket to watch practice and qualifying and not being able to see the whole event, or like the whole duration of practice, is that they paid all that money just for them to get kicked out 2 hours before the practice and qualifying was supposed to end. And yeah, and on top of that, the fans are suing F1 for early exit from practice because they didn't see the whole thing. The whole, like, the show stopped midway through, and with all the money that the fans paid for, they're looking for a refund. And I could completely understand that, because if I'm willing to pay $1,500, $15,000, like, if I don't have it like that, but when I get it like that, I mean, still, like, if I'm going to pay that much money for an experience, like for a once in a lifetime experience, I'll even add that in, and not be able to see the whole thing of it, not even like half of it. I mean, yeah, like, I'd be upset. I would be I would be upset, man. Just because you can't tell me that you know that you're gonna spend $500 million on an event. This is F1. F1 spent $500 million just to host the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and then you're gonna expect people to pay an arm and a leg to go show up and watch it, and not even have the whole thing. I mean, again, this was more of a logistical mistake than it was just a common mistake, because yeah, like, stuff like that can be prevented. It's just, like, again, like, they didn't see like the whole vision, because yeah, like, the track layout wasn't perfectly built, which I get, because again, Vegas streets, they're slightly different than the streets that they're used to racing on, like when they go to Australia, go to Monaco, or go to like Singapore. I mean, yeah, like, these are American streets we're talking about, and for people that drive in American cities, the infrastructure sometimes isn't perfect. But if you go to other countries, though, yeah, their infrastructure is like, they're going to do everything they can to make it perfect if F1's going to host a race there, because yeah, they just can't afford to have any mistakes happen on track. And there was even an issue with the manhole covers, because teams were wrecking out. I think there was a clip that I saw of it was in practice where Carlos Sainz of Team Ferrari, he was racing down the strip, and his car got locked on a manhole cover, and the sparks were flying underneath it, and it caused, like, Ferrari billions of dollars of damage just to one car because of a track malfunction. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure the teams and the drivers they were skeptical about showing up to Vegas because yeah, these are bit like $1 million machines that they're putting out, for every Grand Prix, and that they put so much time to prep for every race that they weren't ready for it. And for some teams they were caught by surprise by it. And just also like the safety aspect too, because I know when we think about motorsports, like every motorsports league in the world tries to do everything they can to make sure that the cars are safe, make sure that the drivers are properly protected when they're racing. And but at times, there's certain things that's not out of their control, like tracks, for example. I mean, a track, yeah, it could be built to the perfect extent. You could add like guardrails, walls, cones, wherever you need to, but sometimes it's not always going to be perfect. Just like how the manhole cover that messed up Carlos Sainz's car, that wasn't perfect because Vegas streets weren't perfect, and they just kind of plopped it there to hey, like we're still going to run this thing, so yeah, let's make sure that we get it in. And I just think there was so like not really like all the way preparation for it, especially with the timing of it. And it kind of shocks me that F1 or the city of Vegas didn't look more into the manhole cover problem because yeah, like at the end, like that's still causing teams to pay a lot of money if the car gets damaged in that kind of way. But I think from just the driver perspective though, drivers were saying how they felt that F1 is kind of going into another direction business wise. I mean, yeah, like the model is still the model. Like racing is still racing. But when we think about just the spectacle of racing, sometimes it could be taken out of context of what that may look like. Yeah, like don't get me wrong. Like I'm not. I think it's great that F1 is traveling to different cities all over the world just to race, even cities here in America. Like going to Miami. I think that was a cool concept because yeah, like like for people that live in Miami, or people that travel to Miami, yeah, like they'll be willing to pay a ton of money to go watch an F1 race just for the experience. The U.S. Grand Prix always set, Circuit of the Americas, a proper race course where, yeah, like, is like the race is going to be good there because it's on a proper race course. But for Vegas, this like in the terms of this being a newly formed event, you know, not everything is going to be expected, especially with it being the first time that there's been race cars on the Las Vegas Strip. But there was a quote that the race winner, Max Verstappen, I mean, geez, I mean, this guy, like, he won 80% of the, or not even 80%, like 90% of the F1 races that took place this year, including the last race that happened at Abu Dhabi this weekend, just to cap it off and win the title. Like, well, he clinched the title already early in the season, but, for a guy to win 19 out of the 22 F1 races is insane, just dominating. So Max Verstappen quoted that I think it is 99% show, 1% sport. They, when he says they, he's referring to Formula One, still made money if I like it or not. So it's not up to me. So I side with Max Verstappen on that quote because, yeah, like, as the driver, he's saying that, yeah, even though I'm an athlete, it's really not up to me to make the decision on, just the landscape of the sport because, there's like they're going to a direction to where F1's not, super, like tied to the sport, just like with the on track product, but they're really trying to expand to the off track product. Like for example, primary example would be Drive to Survive. I mean, the moment when F1 decided that they were going to make a series like to highlight the intricacies of their sport, with the Drive to Survive. I mean, it instantly turned into a sport going down the entertainment route. And yeah, like sports entertainment or sport like entertainment and sports media is very important these days, especially with the ideas that could be brought to life. But when we try to force it or try to do something to where we turn like we use like this outside platform and try to integrate it to the primary platform, which is the on track product, it's going to cause some problems. It could cause, problems in just the way that we view racing, the way that we experience sporting events. I mean, it's so much that goes into just the whole idea of trying to separate the difference from sports and the difference to entertainment. Because sports and entertainment, yeah, like if done right, they can be combined together. But when done wrong, there's a difference. We want to keep sports sports. We want to keep it genuine. Entertainment, yeah, like we still want to keep that genuine, but we don't want to inflict it with what we're trying to keep genuine the most, if you know what I mean. Because yeah, I mean, we don't want scripted we don't want scripted entertainment in sports because like what how I've always seen it is that when I think about sports compared to other forms of entertainment like film or music or like theater, I think sports is can be considered the last frontier of what genuine entertainment looks like. Because, in sports, you can't write the script. In sports, you don't know who the hero is going to be. You don't know who the villain is going to be. Like in sports, like you're going to take talent over presence. Like for someone to drive a race car, they have to be good at it. They just can't be, like, oh, I want to drive a race car. Like, give me the scripts. No, like they're like F1 teams spend millions of dollars to find talent that is good enough to drive a race car. Doesn't matter what age you are, what race you are, what anything. As long as you're good at it, they're going to hire you to do it. Like when it comes to just on field product, like you never know how the story's going to end, and sometimes it's not even predictable, which is why we enjoy so much. I mean, the best thing about watching sports and about seeking entertainment is the aspect of mystery. You can mysteriously see what's going or you can mysteriously think how it's going to end. It's never predictable. And I think with the Vegas Grand Prix, like F1, yeah, like they want to put on a show, but they want to make it, feel like, oh, it's mysterious. But in Max Verstappen's case, him saying that it's starting to become 99% show, 1% sport, is more like him saying that, yeah, it's more for show rather than just competition on track. And it's weird for him to say that, especially him being the guy that won 19 out of 22 of the races this season. For him to say, "Oh, it's 99% show, 1% sport." Well, dude, like it's easy for you because you won most of the races. I mean, like yeah, I want to take you seriously, like when you say stuff like that, but at the same time, though, I still remember that, bro. You're literally like it's like you're bound to win every weekend, just by the way that like you're like F1 is set up. But yeah, it's just a lot that can be considered, and we just want to make sure that we don't conflict the aspect of sport with entertainment. We want to combine it together, but we don't want one overtaking the other, if you know what I mean. And yeah, and also just to go more on the viewership side, if people even watch the thing. And I'll be honest, like I wasn't able to catch the race live, but I was able to catch the highlights of it and watch some other clips that were posted up on F1's YouTube channel. But they were saying or the Athletic and ESPN were saying how they were averaging 1.3 million in viewership for the race. And when I hear 1.3 million, I don't know. It doesn't sound like a much of a success on the TV side, because yeah, because like out of like the for the most watched F1 race this year, they reached up to 1.76 million. 1.3 million for a first time event, especially with how much they were blowing this thing up, like on the marketing side. For you to only hit 1.3 million, I'm thinking like like what? Like, did we miss something? Was there not anything else we could do? Like, I mean, yeah, I get, it was, it's a weekend. Saturday night. Saturday night is most if you live in the United States, Saturday night is mostly used for college football, or even basketball in some cases. But I think the timing of it, because that race came on at like 8 p.m. I think at night, and which is primetime hours. Like 8 p.m. is usually like the best time to have like a big marquee event. But like on the East Coast though, the race started at 11 p.m. Eastern time. Well, I think it's relatively late, but it was weird because when I saw that number, 1.3 million views, like, I mean, it didn't seem right to me for an event like this. Because yeah, like F1 is popular around the world, and yeah, like, and I'm sure like the numbers like 1.3 million could kind of contribute to the numbers on other networks because like they like for the articles that I was looking at, they really only focused on how ESPN was doing, and yeah, like, maybe other networks that covered the race, like I think Sky Sports, they probably had a high number for that too. But yeah, I mean, it just seems kind of underwhelming to be able to hit that number, for that weekend. And yeah, I just think, from how this race ended up, it was great for the spectacle side, but I think, there's a lot that could be learned from how this was prepared. And I think there's going to be a lot more harder for F1 to kind of build off of it for next year, just because of what they had to face for this year. If you watched the previous episode I did, I mentioned how, you know, once you do it the first time, you got to find another way to capitalize it on the next time, and try to make sure that the product like maintains its longevity and maintains its luster, all the way out through the duration. Because for the next 9 years that the Las Vegas Grand Prix is going to take place, there is going to be there has to be some drastic changes for how you're going to market it, how you're going to set it up, and just also what like how you're going to estimate your expectations. Because if none of these aren't met, then it's going to be a much bigger challenge for F1 to get it right the next time. Because I think when I look at how that weekend ended up, you know, it was going to be a given that they weren't going to get anything right on the first go. I mean, that's just it. That's just life. I mean, if you do something the first time, like if you get it right, it's almost luck. But most of the time, if we're speaking realistically, you're not going to get it perfect on the first time. And yeah, like, and everyone just has to accept that. They have to accept that their first go at the Las Vegas Grand Prix wasn't perfect. And when they realize that, it gives them a chance to build for next year. Like for NASCAR, the Chicago Street Course race wasn't perfect, and yeah, it was dramatized. Like, great, it was a great finish, great storyline that came out of it, but they understood that, yeah, it wasn't perfect, and like F1 just has to see it the same way with their show in Las Vegas. Understand that it's not going to be perfect the first time, but it gives you an opportunity to build off for the next time. And yeah, overall, for F1 to host a race like this, I mean, still congratulations to them for even getting this done. And I'm sure Vegas, for people that live in Vegas, I'm sure like there are some folks that were on the positive end of being like, oh yeah, that was a great experience, even though like some of the stuff didn't go perfect, but I would still be willing to pay to go to the race next year. And that's the hope, really. You want to make sure the fans are satisfied enough to want to come back next year. And yeah, like you just really got to hope for that to happen, because that's going to be your push to market it out and get it right the next time. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's people didn't like it, people liked it, people were in the middle about it. But I just think there's a lot that could be learned if you're seeing this from the OFP perspective on how sporting events can really impact the way that we see, or feel about, certain aspects of, working in the industry. Because yeah, the thing that I've learned about being in an industry like this is that you have to be able to adapt on a dime. And yeah, adaptability is probably going to be your main trait to want to stay sane being in the industry. And that's just something that I've learned along the way. And I'm sure if for the OFPs out there that are fortunate enough to one day have a job working for a Formula One team or working for Formula One, the brand itself, or working for an F1 event, just understand that yeah, like if you see things happen in certain circumstances, just be able to adjust, be able to adapt. And if you're working the first time for an event, make sure to understand that hey, it's not going to be perfect, but it's not going to be meant to be perfect, you know. But yeah, just always have that reminder. Always make sure to look in the mirror and tell yourself that hey, the work that I do sometimes is not going to be perfect, but it doesn't mean I can't work to make it perfect, or at least make it close to perfect. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Short episode. Definitely want to do my recap on how I felt about the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and yeah, just giving everybody that reminder that hey, sometimes the first go isn't going to be perfect, and it's just up to you to know how you're going to adapt to that. But yeah, like I definitely believe that the race next year should be a good one. Still, I mean F1 for next season should be have some surprises, and hopefully we can see a different batch of winners winning it, and just it'd be interesting to see how the offseason plays out for all the teams and stuff. But yeah, Las Vegas Grand Prix. I mean, you be the judge. Was it a hit? Was it a miss? Was it in the middle? You decide for yourself. But yeah, as always, if you watch the video version of this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and hit the notification bell to be on the lookout for future videos and future episodes. If you listen to the audio version, either on Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, make sure to keep up and follow the podcast and leave 5 stars as it helps grow the podcast to millions of people around the world. And also, if you are on social media and want to follow the All Field Players podcast for updates, make sure to follow the podcast at OFP underscore podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Again, it's at OFP underscore podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Oh yeah, but that's gonna wrap it up for me. Want to wish everybody a safe week, and make sure to keep staying tuned with the Off Field Players podcast, as more episodes will be coming out soon. And yeah, even gonna try to get back to doing the informational interviews later on. But yeah, just want to thank everybody for continuing to support the podcast, continuing to watch it, share it, stay up to date with it, and yeah, we're gonna keep it going, everybody. So yeah, I'm back. I am back. But yeah, I just want to wish everybody a safe day, safe week, safe weekend. Stay motivated, stay blessed, stay hungry, stay focused, stay humble, and as always, make sure to achieve what you believe.